It all started with a dream I had nurtured for years. Ever since I was a kid, I had my heart set on owning a particular car. Not just any car, but the one that symbolized freedom, success, and a piece of my identity. It was more than just metal and wheels. It was a promise to myself that I could achieve something meaningful, something that no one could take away. I worked hard, saved every penny, and finally, after years of sacrifice, I bought my dream car. It was everything I had imagined: sleek, powerful, and a reflection of who I was becoming. But little did I know, the real journey was about to begin, and it wasn't about the car itself. It was about the people I trusted the most, my parents, and how they would betray that trust. In the most shocking way imaginable, the car was parked in our family garage, gleaming under the soft light, a symbol of my hard work and independence. I had told my parents about it, of course, but I never imagined they would do what they did next. One day, I came home to find the car missing. No note, no explanation, just an empty space where my dream had once stood. Panic set in immediately. I called my parents, but their answers were vague, evasive. Eventually, the truth came out: they had sold my car. Without telling me, without asking me. They had sold it behind my back. The shock was overwhelming. How could they do this? How could the people who raised me, who taught me about respect and honesty, betray me like this? The car wasn't just a possession. It was a symbol of my independence, my hard work, and my dreams. And they had taken it away without a second thought. As the days passed, I realized this wasn't just about the car. It was about control, about family dynamics that had been simmering under the surface for years. My parents had always been controlling, making decisions for me even as an adult, but this crossed a line. Selling my car without my consent was a blatant disregard for my autonomy and my feelings. I decided I wasn't going to let this slide. I was determined to make them pay back every cent, not just for the money, but for the principle of the matter. This was about standing up for myself, reclaiming my power, and sending a message that betrayal, no matter who it comes from, has consequences. The first step was gathering information. I needed to know who bought the car, how much it was sold for, and whether the sale was even legal. I started by asking around discreetly, talking to neighbors, friends, and anyone who might have seen the transaction. It wasn't easy. My parents were tight-lipped, and the family atmosphere was tense. But slowly, pieces of the puzzle started to come together. I found out that the car had been sold to a local dealer, someone my parents had known for years. The price was suspiciously low, far below the market value. It was clear they had sold it quickly, probably to cover some family debts or expenses, without considering the impact on me. The betrayal cut deeper with every detail I uncovered. Armed with this information, I confronted my parents. The conversation was heated, filled with accusations, tears, and long-suppressed resentments. They tried to justify their actions, saying they had no choice, that the family needed the money, and that I was being selfish. But I stood firm. This wasn't about money. It was about respect and trust. I told them I wanted the full amount they had sold the car for, plus compensation for the emotional distress they caused. They laughed it off at first, thinking I was bluffing or that I wouldn't follow through. But I was serious. I had already consulted a lawyer, and I was prepared to take legal action if necessary. The days that followed were a roller coaster. Family members took sides, some supporting me, others defending my parents. The house was filled with tension, silent dinners, and cold stares. But I refused to back down. I knew that standing up for myself was the only way to heal and move forward. Eventually, my parents agreed to repay me, but only after I threatened to go public with the story. They didn't want the embarrassment or the legal trouble. The repayment wasn't just about the money, it was a symbolic victory, a reclaiming of my dignity and my dreams. Looking back, the experience taught me valuable lessons about family, trust, and standing up for what's right. It wasn't easy, and the scars remain, but I'm proud of how I handled it. My dream car was gone, but I gained something far more important: self-respect and the courage to demand justice. If you've ever felt betrayed by those closest to you, know that you're not alone. Sometimes the hardest battles are fought within our own families, but standing up for yourself is the first step toward healing and empowerment. After the initial shock of discovering my dream car was gone, I found myself spiraling through a whirlwind of emotions: anger, disbelief, sadness, and a deep sense of betrayal. It wasn't just about the car anymore. It was about the trust that had been shattered. I kept replaying the moment I first saw the empty garage in my mind, the silence echoing louder than any words could. How could my own parents, the people who were supposed to support me, make such a decision without even telling me? I realized that this wasn't an isolated incident, but part of a larger pattern of control and disregard that had been present in my family for years. My parents had always been overbearing, making choices for me under the guise of knowing what's best, but this time they crossed a line that couldn't be ignored. Selling my car without my consent was a violation of my independence and my hard work. Determined to reclaim what was mine, I began to strategize. I knew I needed to approach this carefully. Emotions were running high, and I didn't want to burn bridges unnecessarily, but I also couldn't let this injustice slide. I started by gathering all the information I could about the sale. Who bought the car? How much did they pay? Was the transaction even legal? I reached out to a few friends who were familiar with local dealerships and car sales. They helped me understand the process and what to look for. I also discreetly asked neighbors and acquaintances if they had seen anything unusual around the time the car disappeared. Slowly, the pieces started to come together. The car had been sold to a dealer my parents had known for years, and the price was suspiciously low, far below what the car was worth. This discovery only fueled my resolve. It was clear that my parents had sold the car quickly, probably to cover some financial issues without considering the impact on me. The betrayal felt deeper with every detail I uncovered. I wasn't just fighting for a car. I was fighting for respect and recognition of my efforts. Armed with this information, I confronted my parents. The conversation was tense and emotional. I laid out everything I had learned and expressed how deeply hurt I was. They tried to justify their actions, saying the family needed the money and that I was being selfish for not understanding. But I stood my ground. This wasn't about money. It was about trust and respect. I told them I expected full repayment for the car, plus compensation for the emotional distress they had caused. At first, they laughed it off, thinking I wouldn't follow through. But I was serious. I had already consulted a lawyer and was prepared to take legal action if necessary. The days that followed were difficult. Family members took sides, and the atmosphere at home became cold and tense. But I refused to back down. I knew that standing up for myself was the only way to heal and move forward. Eventually, my parents agreed to repay me, but only after I threatened to make the story public. They didn't want the embarrassment or legal trouble. The repayment wasn't just about the money, it was a symbolic victory. It was about reclaiming my dignity and my dreams. Looking back, the experience taught me valuable lessons about family, trust, and standing up for what's right. It wasn't easy, and the scars remain, but I'm proud of how I handled it. If you've ever felt betrayed by those closest to you, know that you're not alone. Sometimes the hardest battles are fought within our own families, but standing up for yourself is the first step toward healing and empowerment. The tension in the house was palpable after my confrontation with my parents. Every conversation felt like walking on eggshells, and the silence between us was heavier than ever. But beneath all that tension, I felt a growing sense of determination. This wasn't just about a car anymore. It was about reclaiming my dignity and standing up for myself in a family that had long ignored my voice. I started documenting everything: texts, conversations, receipts, anything that could support my case. I knew that if this escalated to legal action, I needed solid proof. I also reached out to a lawyer who specialized in family disputes and property rights. The advice was clear. I had a strong case, especially since the car was legally mine, purchased with my own money, and sold without my consent. But before taking any drastic steps, I wanted to give my parents one last chance to make things right. I drafted a formal letter outlining my demands: full repayment of the car's value, plus compensation for the emotional distress caused. I sent it via certified mail to ensure they couldn't ignore it. Days passed with no response. The silence was deafening. I began to realize that this fight was going to be harder than I thought. My parents weren't just dismissing me, they were actively trying to avoid accountability. That's when I decided to take a different approach. I started sharing my story anonymously on Reddit, hoping to find support and advice from others who had faced similar betrayals. The response was overwhelming. People shared their own stories of family betrayal, toxic relationships, and the struggle to reclaim what was rightfully theirs. Their encouragement gave me strength. Meanwhile, I continued to push for repayment. I contacted the dealership where the car was sold and confirmed the sale price. It was shockingly low, confirming my suspicion that my parents had sold it hastily and without regard for my investment. Armed with this information, I prepared to escalate the matter legally. But I also knew that exposing the story publicly could pressure my parents to do the right thing. I was ready to take that step if necessary. The day finally came when my parents called me. Their tone was different, less defensive, more resigned. They agreed to repay me, but only after I made it clear I was serious about pursuing legal action and sharing the story publicly. It wasn't the perfect resolution I had hoped for, but it was a start. I had made them acknowledge their wrongdoing and take responsibility. More importantly, I had stood up for myself and refused to be silenced. Looking back, this experience taught me that sometimes the hardest battles are fought within our own families. That standing up for yourself, demanding respect, and seeking justice is never wrong. My dream car was gone, but I gained something far more valuable: self-respect and the courage to fight for what's right. After my parents finally agreed to repay me, I thought the worst was behind me. But family dynamics are rarely that simple. The repayment process itself became another battleground. My parents dragged their feet, making excuses and delaying payments. It was clear they wanted to wear me down, hoping I'd give up and let the matter drop. But I was determined not to let that happen. I kept meticulous records of every interaction, every promise made and broken. I reminded them firmly but respectfully that this was not just about money, it was about respect and accountability. Slowly, the repayments started trickling in, but it was far from the full amount. I realized I needed to be more assertive. I consulted my lawyer again, who advised me on the best legal steps to ensure full repayment. We drafted a formal agreement outlining the repayment schedule and consequences for default. This document was sent to my parents, making it clear that I was serious about enforcing my rights. The tension in the family grew. Some relatives sided with me, others with my parents. Family gatherings became awkward, filled with silent judgments and whispered conversations. But I refused to back down. I knew that standing up for myself was the only way to heal and move forward. During this time, I also focused on healing myself emotionally. I sought therapy to process the betrayal and rebuild my trust in others. It was a difficult journey, but necessary. I learned to separate my worth from the actions of my family and to find strength in my own resilience. As the repayments continued, I began to feel a sense of closure. The car was gone, but justice was being served in its own way. had reclaimed my power and set boundaries that my family could no longer ignore. This experience changed me. It taught me the importance of standing up for myself, even when it's hard. It showed me that betrayal, no matter how painful, can be a catalyst for growth and empowerment. If you're watching this and have faced similar betrayals, know that you're not alone. It's okay to demand respect and justice, even from those closest to you. Your voice matters and your story deserves to be heard. Even after the repayment process was underway, the emotional scars ran deep. The betrayal by my own parents left a wound that money alone couldn't heal. I found myself questioning everything, my family, my trust in people, and even my own judgment. How could those who were supposed to protect me be the ones to hurt me the most? But amidst the pain, I discovered a new strength within myself. I realized that this experience, as devastating as it was, could be a catalyst for growth and empowerment. I refused to let their actions define me or dictate my future. I began focusing on rebuilding my life, setting new goals, and surrounding myself with people who truly valued and respected me. I took up new hobbies, invested time in my career, and worked on my emotional well-being. Therapy became a crucial part of my healing process, helping me process the betrayal and learn to trust again. At the same time, I continued to hold my parents accountable. The repayment agreement was a constant reminder that respect and responsibility go hand in hand. I wasn't interested in revenge for revenge's sake. I wanted justice and acknowledgement of the wrongs done. Family gatherings remained tense, but I learned to navigate them with grace and boundaries. I stopped seeking their approval and instead focused on my own happiness and peace. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Sharing my story publicly, even anonymously, became a source of empowerment. The support and solidarity from strangers who had faced similar betrayals reminded me that I wasn't alone. It also gave me a platform to raise awareness about toxic family dynamics and the importance of standing up for oneself. Over time, the repayments were completed. My parents fulfilled their financial obligation, but the emotional debt was something we all had to work through separately. Forgiveness wasn't immediate, nor was it guaranteed, but I chose to focus on my own healing rather than holding on to resentment. This journey taught me invaluable lessons about trust, boundaries, and self-worth. It showed me that sometimes the hardest battles are fought within our own families, but standing up for yourself is the first step toward reclaiming your power. If you're going through something similar, remember, your feelings are valid, your voice matters, and you deserve respect. Don't be afraid to seek help, set boundaries, and fight for your dignity. My dream car may have been sold without my knowledge, but I gained something far more important, a renewed sense of self and the courage to demand justice. As time went on, I began to reflect more deeply on the entire ordeal, the betrayal, the fight for justice, and the emotional toll it took on me. It wasn't just about the car anymore. It was about reclaiming my identity and learning to trust myself again. The experience forced me to confront painful truths about my family and myself, but it also opened the door to growth and healing. One of the hardest parts was accepting that my parents, despite their flaws, were human too. They made mistakes, some of them unforgivable, but holding on to anger indefinitely only weighed me down. I started to explore forgiveness not for their sake, but for my own peace of mind. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting or excusing what happened. It meant releasing the grip of bitterness so I could move forward. I also realized the importance of setting clear boundaries. For years, I had allowed my parents to make decisions for me, to control aspects of my life under the guise of care. This experience was a wake-up call that I needed to assert my independence and protect my emotional well-being. Boundaries became my shield, helping me navigate family interactions with confidence and self-respect. Therapy continued to be a vital part of my journey. Talking through my feelings, understanding the dynamics at play, and learning coping strategies helped me rebuild my sense of self. I discovered that healing is not linear, it comes with setbacks and breakthroughs, but every step forward is progress. Sharing my story publicly, even anonymously, connected me with a community of people who had faced similar betrayals. Their support and shared experiences reminded me that I wasn't alone, and that many others had found strength in standing up for themselves. This sense of solidarity was empowering and motivated me to keep advocating for justice and respect. Financially, the repayment of the car was completed, but the emotional reconciliation was ongoing. My relationship with my parents remained complicated, marked by moments of tension and attempts at understanding. I learned to accept that some relationships don't fit the ideal mold, and that's okay. What mattered most was my own growth and peace. Looking back, the loss of my dream car was painful, but it became a catalyst for transformation. I emerged stronger, more self-aware, and more determined to live life on my own terms. The experience taught me that betrayal, while devastating, can also be a powerful teacher. If you're watching this and facing betrayal or toxic family dynamics, know that healing is possible. It takes courage to stand up for yourself, seek help, and set boundaries, but it's worth it. Your story matters, and your voice deserves to be heard. Remember, justice isn't always about punishment. It's about reclaiming your power and finding peace. My journey with my dream car taught me that, and I hope it inspires you to do the same. The final chapter of this journey was not just about closure, but about transformation. After months of emotional turmoil, legal wrangling, and personal growth, I found myself standing at a crossroads. The car, once a symbol of my dreams and hard work, was gone. But what remained was far more valuable, a newfound sense of self, resilience, and clarity about what I deserved from life and from those around me. The repayment had been completed, and while the money could never fully compensate for the betrayal, it was a tangible acknowledgement of the wrong done. More importantly, it was a testament to my refusal to be silenced or dismissed. I had made my parents understand that their actions had consequences, and that respect is not optional, even within families. Rebuilding my relationship with my parents was complicated. There were moments of tentative reconciliation, but also times when the wounds felt too fresh to bridge. I learned to accept that some relationships are imperfect and that healing doesn't always mean returning to how things were. Sometimes it means creating new boundaries and redefining connections on your own terms. Throughout this process, I leaned heavily on my support system, friends, therapists, and the online community that had embraced my story. Sharing my experience helped me process the pain and find strength in vulnerability. It also allowed me to connect with others who had faced similar betrayals, reminding me that I was not alone. One of the most powerful lessons I learned was the importance of self-advocacy. For too long, I had allowed others to make decisions for me, to diminish my voice. This experience forced me to reclaim my agency and stand firm in my truth. It taught me that empowerment comes from within and that sometimes the hardest battles lead to the greatest growth. I also discovered the value of forgiveness, not as a gift to those who hurt me, but as a release for myself. Forgiving my parents did not mean forgetting or excusing their actions. It meant freeing myself from the burden of anger and resentment. It was a step toward peace, allowing me to move forward without being anchored to the past thought. As I reflect on this journey, I realized that the loss of my dream car was a catalyst for profound change. It forced me to confront painful realities, set boundaries, and embrace my worth. It showed me that betrayal, while deeply painful, can also be a powerful teacher. If you're watching this and have experienced betrayal, especially from those closest to you, know that your feelings are valid. It's okay to feel hurt, angry, and confused. But also know that you have the strength to stand up for yourself, seek justice, and heal. Your story matters. Your voice deserves to be heard. and your journey toward empowerment is possible. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, please consider subscribing for more real-life tales of betrayal, revenge, and justice. Together, we can find strength in shared experiences and inspire each other to stand tall. No matter the challenges. Remember, justice isn't just about punishment. It's about reclaiming your power and living your truth.